Hello, and welcome to the inaugural Liv Balanced Podcast, where the point is to live balanced, breathe you. And throughout this podcast, we are going to uncover the layers of what it actually means to live balanced and breathe you. And we are starting with Stefanie Garcia, the host and creator of the Art of Becoming series podcast, where her goal is to help her clients find their identity. So welcome, Stefanie.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited. This is so fun.
This is fun. And Stefanie and I know each other, and be prepared, everybody, because we're going to go fast. We're going to talk about some serious topics in depth, and we're just going to go there. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're vacuuming, you're in the tub, you're in the car, and you're listening, or maybe you're even watching on the YouTube channel. Listen, that's my goal to you, is listen and let it soak in, because there's some good stuff here. So Stefanie, what does it mean to help someone find their identity?
It can feel like that's such a big thing, but really what I do in all of my work, honestly, is help people to connect back to that part of themselves. I think people look for their identity, they look for their purpose, these things that feel so big and so outside of themselves that they've got to go chase it and go find it. But honestly, it's always here. It's always showing up in your life and everything you do. And it's about getting back to it and connecting back to it.
Okay. And how do you help someone connect to who they are? And what I'm hearing is that they already have within them what they need to own who they are. And as it says on your podcast information, owning who you are, what you do, and own it in the world. Mm-hmm. So help me understand how you do that and why it's such a value that someone talk to you in your process.
Well, it is a process. I think the most important thing, one of the main reasons I created the Art of Becoming is because of my own life journey of learning that life isn't so much about a destination. It's a becoming, it's a growing, it's an evolution. And I always believe that, especially as children, I mean, you look at a child, they are just so incredibly pure. They are who they are. As that child grows up, they enter into society, and even before society, you're with your family, their friends, your siblings, you go to school, you get all of this information about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And you go from that innocent, perfect, pure being, and that starts to become molded by the outside world.
The social norms start to stack up.
Yeah. And so instead of staying connected, we almost sometimes separate. So it isn't so much about finding the identity. It's about getting back to recognizing that it's there. You got to remove all of the layers.
Oh, yes. And there are many layers.
And there are many layers.
There are many layers depending upon the person.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great
And that's a great segue into how we met and how you helped me find that where I was. Mm-hmm. And would you like to just tell the audience and the listeners about sort of how we met and how you helped me you're an integral part of Liv Balanced, because we had this discussion. So I'd like to hear it from your perspective.
I was going to say, you're probably the one that's best to talk about this.
I can, but I'm the host of this one. So you get to talk.
Okay. All right. So, okay.
I will. Okay. I'll pop in.
Right. Well, I was like, goodness, it's been a while ago.
It's been a while. Yeah. So I'll start. So I had finished law school and graduated, and I was taking a road trip and a weekend in Stefanie's hometown. And I met her and we just started talking, and it was myself and a couple other ladies, and we're just chatting away. And Stefanie asks pertinent questions about just me, like, law school's a big deal. What are you doing next? Are you taking care of yourself? And I got to tell you, that process started then, because I was like, who is this person? And why is she asking me these questions? These are really personal questions. And I had just come off of some very intense life situations. And so if you follow me on social media or my website, and the journey I've taken includes, divorce and then law school and moving and all kinds of stuff. And she's asking me these questions and I'm like, But there was a part of me that just was like, Olivia, just listen. Coming off of law school, you can be hyper vigilant in overanalyzing everything and everyone at all times. And I just sort of listened and followed my gut, and we exchanged information. And she is a photographer. She has photography background and is a photographer. And I was a model, and I was building my website. And so I reached out to her to learn a little bit more, and then learned that she does some styling. She's a stylist, and she really helped her process, your process of helping someone find their authenticity so that it's captured in photographic form was new to me, I think. So that's, because she did many of the pictures you'll see on my website. She took those. What else to add there?
Well, what I laugh about the most is probably you're like, when you were saying how I came off at the, well, what are you doing? Where are you going next? I don't know if I hope I was never coming off like that, but I do feel like the greatest thing about Olivia is you feel like you know her from the moment you meet her. And so I had never met her before that day, but it was like we got into a conversation quick and deep. And it was one of those, I really feel like it was a conversation that came from a place of turning point. I think I was at a turning point in my life. You were at a turning point in your life. And I just feel like that's how fate comes in sometimes.
Yes.
And I was thinking to myself, I as much as you say that I'm a big part of Liv Balanced, I also feel like you were a big part of me stepping into this work as well.
Thank you.
Herald to big new beginnings, essentially, with this new podcast. I think it's really important to start somewhere,
It is.
And so everything that I do is always about authenticity. It's always about bringing people back to who they originally are, and helping them to just get back to owning that. There's, when you're talking about owning who you are, owning what you do, and owning it out into the world, it is all about, again, owning your likes, your desires, your wants, your dreams, owning who you are. Big part of coming out of Liv Balanced for you, I believe, was just owning that you wanted to own that part of yourself that's balanced. You were feeling so out of balance for the longest time.
Very much so.
It was just, and it was just about, you really wanted to be in balance, get back to balance, put more of you in your life. Is what I'm.
And I think that you, when I met you, picked up on that, and few people do that. Now, you were not. There was nothing wrong with the questions you were asking when I met you. No, I promise everybody, Stefanie was totally fine and professional and nice. And
I didn't come in there and interrogate you when I first met you.
just a decent human. I think what that does is it shows what can happen when you're wound up, and so. I'm going to succinctly try to tie in the process that she took me through and why I wanted to launch the podcast with Talking with Stefanie. So if you may not know yet, but I wear lots of hats and I have lots of interests. That's just who I am. I am by training, I'm an attorney. I'm also a teacher. I'm an artist. I love sequins and frills as much as I love structure and texture and clothing and fashion. And coming out of law school and what I've been through and the intensity of it, I felt imbalanced because it was so intense and it was so hyper vigilant and it was always just being concerned about performing. And the thing is I had not yet acknowledged the fact that I may be a lawyer and I may be in business, have to make very professional and intense decisions, but I love clothing and I love frilliness and I love sequins. And that's like this particular shawl that I'm wearing today is pretty much a great expression of who I am. And Stefanie helped me to see that and be okay because her process of helping someone find that is to ask questions, but to say, look, I think we created a mood board. I sent you pictures of what I felt expressed me for the photography session.
Yeah. Yeah. I one of the things that I do in my sessions is to really get to the heart of who a person is through their clothing and that expression. And for you, you were coming out of actually where you were at that moment was you just came out of law school and you were in between that space, I can't speak today, that space between law school and taking the bar.
Yes.
And you knew that you needed something creative. You knew you wanted to have a different expression than that corporate world.
Yes.
And it was, I think one of the biggest things that I remember was helping you to see that you could put you into the corporate world.
Yes.
And just because you were a lawyer didn't mean that you had to just completely abandon who you are in that world. So, but wearing those bright colored clothes, you were like, I can't do that. I have to wear this. I have to be professional and all those things. And it was to help you to remember that professionalism is showing up on time. It's in how you speak. It's not being rude. There's a bunch of things to professionalism that doesn't necessarily have to do with your clothing. I mean, you're not wearing anything risque. You're not you're not crossing the line. So you're being professional in there. You are kind of connecting professionalism to dullness and to that
a box. Those social norms we talked about at the beginning. Where I grew up, my genuine Livia is just, I'm pretty silly and I love color and I love to move, and anything rigid is not really me. I'm a relator by nature. And so I felt the responsibility to portray that part of myself, but it was also negating my essence, me.
Yeah. And it was just all about bringing that out for you. Bringing that essence back out, so that this job didn't own you. It would be an expression of you. You can be in this job. You can own yourself in this job instead of it owning you. And it's already taking up a lot of your time and all these different things, but you have to still be a part of that.
And that by learning and recognizing and accepting those facets of you, you begin to learn how to weave them into the responsibilities that we all have to do what we need to do, to go to meetings, to meet demands, to set and pursue goals, to deal with and interact with people. But what I have learned, and I am continuing to learn, because living balance is not a destination, it is an everyday situation that is, ebbs and flows with life's events, is that you will be stronger and you will be more effective in what you do if you are constantly tapping into who you are, and it's expressed through the many facets of your personality and character. And that the fact that can change and grow, and you can change it, and it's okay if it's a little different than what you thought it was, or it's nervous for you to wear a dress that's super bright when everyone else is wearing navy and black, but that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of you. It's really not your business what someone else thinks of you, because you're going through the world and you're the only one whose opinion matters in the end. And for me, it's been a journey of accepting that, but it's always been there.
Yeah. And it's a becoming. Again, it's an evolution. We start out as these beings when we're born, and the journey is about evolving from that place. And sometimes we get stuff packed on top of us. And eventually comes a time where you have to take those things off to come back to that essence, because it's so draining to going up a river rather than going with it. It's so draining to be carrying all of these things, and you have to be this, you have to live in this box in this way. There's only so many ways you can twist and turn and limit yourself before you just start becoming very depressed and the life starts coming out of you. But the more that you can live, giving yourself the permission to be you in these things and do things your way, suddenly you're going down the river and you're not as drained.
And I think that that's a great metaphor, because a river is constantly moving. And I've used a metaphor before when I teach that an organism, if you want to know what happens to an organism that never grows and seeks it and has new input, like a river, just look at the Dead Sea. There's nothing alive in it because it has no inlets, it has no outlets. Rivers, on the other hand, are constantly fed by something, and they go out into something else. And it's an ever-changing metaphor, I personally believe, for the growth and the life cycle that we have and the time that we have. And so I just want to publicly thank you for your involvement and your assistance when maybe you didn't even understand it. And we're getting to know each other as friends, what that impact was, because I truly believe we will meet people on our path who come to us for reasons that we may not recognize, but we have to be sensitive enough to sense it and not put ourselves down, at least have an opportunity to explore and be like, okay, this is good, whatever it might be. So thank you.
No, well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, if we're going to go back to the, and thank you for your part of it in my journey, because it's never a one-way street on that. If we're going to use the river metaphor, though, it's also, the river is never just straight. If anybody's ever went kayaking or canoeing, then they know that the river can turn and ups and downs, and sometimes it goes really slow and it's really tranquil, and then sometimes it speeds up. It's taking those banks, taking those turns.
Yeah.
If you don't go with that, you do get banked. If you don't go with that flow, but sometimes you're meeting people and life asks you to go in different directions, and you have to flow with that, and it's to your benefit. But if you don't, you get banked.
You get banked. And also that the river will look different if you take the Mississippi in Minnesota than it does in Louisiana, but it's still the same river. And it's going to look different with the inputs and the outputs that we have in our life, and the people and the choices that we make. And so I think that's a great metaphor for becoming. And in your podcast, relatively new launch, but exciting, you talk about concepts that you and I have talked about, but on, being too much. That's something we have discussed. I have often felt like I'm never enough and I'm too much at the same time, because I have taken someone's words to heart when that's not where they belong. Because if someone thinks that I'm too much, that is not a reflection of me. Doesn't mean I can't learn in a context of business, if, presenting or something, but like, if someone thinks my personhood is too much for them, that's not a reflection of me. That's a reflection of how they feel. And I think that that's something that's a big issue right now for everyone, is what it's like to feel like you're too much. Or you also talk on your podcast about leaning in, better decision-making and purpose. So we're talking about the deep stuff. And what drove you to create the podcast series and the topics that you have existing right now?
My own journey, personally.
Okay.
I actually
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
I grew up feeling like I was not enough. And then I also grew up feeling like I was too much in other ways. So there was this confusion that I grew up with. There was this feeling like I wanted to be authentic. I saw things differently than other people. I always kind of felt like I was on the outside of the crowd. And I kept getting that messaging that, pushing me off, don't do this, do that. I never did feel like I could actually take the path of my own authenticity. And yet I felt the potential I had. And so growing up, I always saw the potential in people and in things and in ideas. I've always been a big vision, big concept person. And I always was watching people just shrink in their own way, in their own lives. And I always thought, you could be so much bigger. You could be so much more. I believe in people's authenticity. I believe in their potentiality. But it was one thing for me to say that. It was a whole other thing to realize that I could say it yet I wasn't being congruent. I wasn't living it.
Mm-hmm.
So life, as it always does, again with that river, life had a way of showing me where I was being incongruent with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through that journey of learning that, because I was always going for that destination. Even as a photographer, the first half of my career as a photographer was always like, I got to go do the next big thing. It's all about the next client, the next photo shoot, where am I going in like 5 years? Where am I going in 10 years? All those big things. And for a while it was exciting, but then I was like, it stopped being exciting. I started waking up in the mornings dreading going to a photo shoot, and I go, well, that's not how I want to feel.
Right.
And then life had its funny way of just all of a sudden one day I lost all of my clients, like within a matter of a couple months, and the doors just shut. And it didn't matter what I did, I couldn't get another client. And it was life's way of turning me in a different direction to get me to realize that it's not about the destination. It's not about where you're going. It's not about the dreams you're chasing that are really for somebody else. It's about what's your evolution? Who are you becoming? And it was just me realizing that it is just an evolution process. I'm still that person I was when I was born. This is just, who am I evolving into? It's becoming more and more and more of that light and that essence in the world, because that's what the world really needs. And so the Art of Becoming series talks about that. It comes from that same space.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I had, in all of our conversations, I had never asked that direct question, but for everybody, I did a little nerd research, because that's me. And a nerd, by the way, is a good term.
Own it.
Totally own it. That's another thing. We won't go into the backstory, but geek versus nerd, I learned the difference. Nerd is basically somebody really smart, and then geek is someone who's really into something. So you can be both a geek and a nerd. Total segue, but that is what someone told. That opened up my world. I had no idea. Yeah, that's what because someone told me that I was a nerd, and I'm like, can you help me understand what you mean by that? Because when I grew up, nerd was, it was a kind of a negative stereotype for someone who enjoyed academia. But I think it's changed a little bit.
I think so.
So, doing my research, becoming and owning it, who you are, what you do, and owning it in the world is part of the motto for the Art of Becoming. And we're talking about authenticity today, and the great challenge and adventure of learning who you are after you shed the social norms and the words people have put into your heart, and the struggles you've dealt with, and learning about the things where you could have done better, or maybe healing from trauma. And authenticity is not being false by definition. It's also being true to one's own personality, spirit, and character. And of course, spirit, personality, and character are three things that are quantitatively difficult to measure. They're all psychology. They're all qualitative measurements. They're all described by other words, by feelings, by emotions. And in order to really learn your own authenticity and to be true to that, you do have to open yourself to shedding that quantitative sort of, put into our heads since we're kids, math, science, rigidness, and think about things in a different way and be receptive to life in a different way. So how do you do that in order to stay fresh and be prepared and be authentic to yourself and what you're doing with the series?
You know what? If you're talking about the series, it honestly just creates itself every single week.
Okay.
I'm just always looking at my own life, because I don't believe I can create anything from a place that isn't my own life. Everything that I do in my life is created from my life. Even in the styling and the photography, it literally just came from my own experiences with that growing up, and what I already enjoyed and what I saw. Again, it doesn't really matter what it is that I do. The tools can be different. The essence of what I do is the same. It's always just it's just another tool. I mean, you can go to a therapist and you're trying to find, sorry, that was really
That's okay, you're fine.
So you can go to a therapist And that's a tool to get connected to yourself when you're feeling like you're lost or you're blocked in some way. You can take an art class, and that's another way for you to get close to who you are again. Fashion could be one way to do that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, no, again, the essence of who we are and what we do, even in the career that you do now, I'm pretty sure that your life led you to be a lawyer. Some things in your life made you think, I need to do this, I want to do this, because it's what you're seeing in your perspective. Yes. A lot of just owning it is about owning our own decisions, again, our own decisions, our own desires, but it's also our own perspectives, our own histories, how we saw things, taking up space, our own space, and just owning that, and owning our existence and our right to be here and our right to say something. And
let it sit and let it be and be proud, not shirk from it, not explain it away, not apologize it away.
And that's that taking space. Yeah,
exactly. And I think it's it's just what we do in our separate professions with Liv Balanced and with your podcast they're related, but they're different. So, but the core is the same, is that when I am making a decision about something on Liv Balanced, I created it because the best way that I know how to teach, to encourage, and to do the things that are in my heart is to use myself and my experiences as an example, because I know someone can understand it in some facet of it. And that vulnerability is valuable, and individuals are scared to be vulnerable. And it's a difficult thing for me to marry up with my profession as an attorney to be vulnerable, because there is this perception that you have to be strong and you non-emotional, and everything about that is antithesis to me as a person. One of the best compliments I've ever received, and I received it from more than one person, and sometimes from people I don't know, but who've talked to me in a short time, is that I am a genuine person and I am authentic. And when I first heard it, I was like, I've never heard somebody say that. But then I began to hear other people say that as I started sharing more of myself and just, this is how it is. And that is an enormous compliment, because that really does validate who I am at my core. And it's not pretty sometimes. Sometimes it's not fashionable. Sometimes it's exhausting, and sometimes it's vulnerable, and sometimes there's crying, but it's what it is, and it's who I am. And that's why we have the living, balanced, breathing you. And the balance word, do you remember where the word balance came from in Liv Balanced?
Okay, well, I'm thinking, my brain keeps thinking about the yoga. That's what I was thinking, but I don't know if that's where.
Well, the yoga is definitely part of the balance, but from my perspective, so after Stefanie, when I asked her to work with her to do photography for the website and to go through her process for styling, I mentioned earlier that I had not had someone work on the styling to prepare for a photo shoot in the same way. And she asked me to send pictures of the clothing that I liked, and we created a mood board. And so I sent her images, and I have a mood board at home because that's me. And I express, as you mentioned, I express my personality through fabric, texture, through fashion. That is me. And a couple days later, we were preparing, and she goes, I see these pieces of clothing that are super feminine and soft and texture. And then I see these pieces that are powerful and structured. And she goes, it's really just kind of a balance. And I was like, yeah, that is the word.
Now I remember.
That is the
word.
I
remember.
Yeah. And so as I was marinating on launching my website, I was like, okay, so that is me. And that is what existed before I met Stefanie, because that mood board had been in my house for 10 years. And it always cycled, but it always had that balance of lawyerly structured pieces of clothing and giant ball gowns that were floofy. And so I was like, what better way than to say live balanced? And breathing is from a wellness perspective, one of the simplest and most effective means that you can do anywhere at any time to regain balance, not only figuratively, but your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system will actually balance itself when you do deep breathing. So that's kind of where Live Balanced Breathe You came from. So that's another reason why you are here today.
You know, can I also add the fact that the thing about breathing, when we've been criticized or had so many expectations put on us, especially as young kids, like you have to get good grades, you have to show up on time, do your homework. If you don't get a certain grade, some people, you will have a consequence. And then when you get into high school, you got to get that college. You got to figure out where you're going. You got to know exactly by the time that you're getting ready to get out of high school, exactly what you're going to do for the next 40 years of your life.
Yeah, the age of 17, 18.
All of that. And when you think about that, and if any of us just check in for a moment, we go, that just feels so tight. And it's almost like you stop breathing.
Yeah.
Something about recognizing you in your life and choosing to own that. There's that feeling of breathing again. Like you can take a deep breath when you've been holding it for so long because you're in that fight mode in your body or that freeze mode in your body. Or that peace mood where you're like, oh my gosh, what do I need to do? How can I make this better? How can I make you like me? All of that stuff.
Yeah, you're in a constant state of chronic stress.
Stress, yes. And I think one of the biggest things I remember from your session was how much you thought these two parts of yourself were separate.
Yes.
You really came to the session wanting to do more of those tighter, like those corporate looks. And even when I was going through your clothes for the session, you showed me, you had a lot of clothes that were very corporate colors, which you're expected to wear. And you didn't even at first show me any of the bright colored stuff. You were like, no, I can't wear any of those things. I said, well, why can't you wear them to work? Of course you can wear them to work. It took a while for you to realize, you could. Yeah, you could do that. They are not separate things. You bring you into it. They hired you for a reason. That means you have something to offer. But I wonder if many of us start to think that why they picked us in a job is because of this trait, this ability to type this, exactly, you know what I'm talking about, is these little tangible things, the mechanics, but really people pick you because they can feel something within you.
Right.
They know what you're going to bring. They may not be able to put their fingers on it.
Right.
They may not put it to words, but there's something about you. And you wouldn't, and I'm a very spiritual person. I don't believe you would be in that position if you weren't meant to be there. So really be there. But in order to do that, you got to bring all of you in it.
Exactly. Even if you're nervous to express it because of fear of rejection or I've never really talked to somebody about how much I absolutely love ball gowns or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, again, there's that place within society that, again, that conditioning, that's when we did express ourselves, maybe if you have if you have a hard time doing it, it's because somewhere in your past, you got the message that being that is not
correct.
All right.
Yes.
You don't do that here. We graduate from high school, go into college, get into the working fields, and there's this idea that you leave you at the door.
Yeah.
And that part gets cut off, and then maybe you can get back to it when you clock out. But being professional doesn't mean any of those things. And I really feel like right now, at least, the world is changing.
And to your point, the best metaphor I have for that, and I just recognized it as we're talking, is in my past career, just going through, like you said, I was a performance athlete. I was a performer on stage. There was a strong, it has to be this way, has to be this way, you have to do this, you have to get the goal setting, which goals are not bad, but if they're not what you want to do, then they're going to eventually be oppressive. And I remember thinking to myself, I had to sort of put on an armor every day to get through the day. I mean, I physically, literally felt like I had to place like this metaphorical armor on in order to protect me that you see now, who's very much more comfortable from everything else, so I could do my job, get through the day. And I haven't really thought that and for quite some time now. And that is freeing, because it's just like, look, this is what you get. If you know me, you know me, and whatever you think is your thoughts. And I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to express. And whatever it is. And, I know what I have done, and I know what I have earned in my life. And I am owning that now, finally, at the age of 40. And I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
So,
and brava.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But no,
yeah.
It's just, if you wanted anyone listening to take away maybe 3 essential elements of what you want them to understand about just owning themselves, and clearly we want them to check out the podcast and listen to more in-depth conversations about what you've talked about. But what would be 3 things that you just really want to convey to those listening or watching?
You already know who you are. You already know that. There was a long time that I was trying to find myself. And I one day told my dad, I said, Dad, I just want to find myself. And he looked at me and he goes, Stefanie, you don't need to find anything. You already are yourself. You don't have to discover anything. It's already there. So you already know it. You already are there. The second thing is you really have to own your past. It's really going to be to your benefit that you mine that and you look at it and get to know what the treasures are there. But more from the place of all these things happened to you, whatever they were, good, bad, and different. But at the end of the day, it happened for a reason. There's something that you needed to see. There's a perspective you got from it. There's a wisdom that child saw and every version of you has seen. And it really does play into what you're meant to do in this world. Yeah. And 3 would be get support. Yes. Really get support. It's hugely important to start surrounding yourself with people who really do think and feel and believe the same way you do, or anything. See who you really are and support that.
Support it. Exactly.
Yep.
I would.
Yeah. People, I mean, especially if you've seen, especially if you've not had that really mirrored in your life. If you've gotten a lot of the messages that what you do is not good enough and who you are is not good enough, or you're too much, or you're not enough, finding people in your life, even in the smallest of ways. I mean, gosh, when I came from a pretty dark place and not seeing that in my life, and there was a moment in my life where I had to be like, okay, you know what? My dog, totally okay with who I really am. Okay. Yes! My son totally loves me for who I am. And I will tell you, I had to sit with that for a year of just, because I was getting all sorts of other information of I'm not good enough and this is not okay. So much criticism from family. And it was a very dark place for me. And that was the light that I had to be on. And eventually more people did come around to support me the more I kept moving forward. And I really feel like from that place, I'm able to turn around and support other people as well. So
that's awesome.
Those are my 3 things.
Those are the pillars. They're the pillars, because if you have what you need and you look at what you've been through and you ask for assistance, you are constantly, going back to the metaphor, getting the ebb and flow in and out of getting rid of those things that you may never have purposely done, but were part of your growing up in existence, or maybe traumas. And you are getting the mirror that you need from others who are seeing you and help, and that can help you grow. And so looking at your past and mining the treasures, there's also an element of maybe having to make some hard surgical removals of the negativity, And that can be painful, and it will be painful. It's what it is. But when you are owning yourself and you are loving yourself for everything that you are, people who appreciate that will come. And you're exactly right about that. And I started to see that in my life. And part of that in my own personal growth in the last year has had to recognize a role I played growing up. I don't have to take care of these. I had certain individuals whose behaviors were incongruent with what they said I had to remove. And then I had a very perceptive therapist who said, find people who've had experiences similar to yours who can help you, because they know where you've been, because they've been on their own journey. So you are not responsible for everyone's everything. And that has been my challenge as role in my family and growing up and being just my role as an attorney. You're always asked to be in charge. And I was a teacher. So I've always filled that role. And I don't mind it now. I can fill it now as me in choosing without that feeling I have to do it, because it just was. And that's a beautiful, settling thing.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Oh, please add all you want. No, I was going to say my last sort of, as we're wrapping up here, is what else is on your heart to share? Because that's what we're here for.
The one thing I want to share is that, really honestly, we are all in this together.
Yes.
We really are. Finding people who've been there and can support you really just comes from the fact of looking around and realizing we're more alike than we are different. Mm-hmm. And even in this conversation between Olivia and I, it literally started with a conversation in a restaurant. It really did. It started that way. But here's the other thing. If you can grab on to those little branches that the universe is throwing at you and keep being willing to follow that, those little threads, there's a little thread. If you just keep following it, it will lead you to that becoming of more who you want to be. I feel like if we're ever feeling disconnected from it and feeling like we're not alive in our work or in our jobs, it's because we've let go of that thread. We're not following the river as much as we need to. We've kind of gotten banked, or we're sitting on the bank of the river, watching it go by, but not actually interacting with it. But if we could actually get back into the boat, and even if it looks like we don't know where it's going, if we can get back into it, into the, I said river, so it's really like kayak or canoe or whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Floaties, it doesn't really matter.
Whatever it is, yeah. If you can all you have to do is get back in, and it will take you where you need to go if you're willing to follow it. But it will lead you to where you need to go, even in my darkest moments. Just holding on to that little piece of that thread that I could find did lead to more people who were like-minded. It did lead to to seeing more of that love in my life when I could not see it.
Yeah. And sometimes we can't see it because of whatever is going on, which is one of the reasons it's so essential to have, you're pursuing it, but you are getting that outside feedback from trusted persons.
And, the thought about needing to remove the negativity, I really honestly believe that if where our energy flows, where our attention goes. So if you're sitting there in your life trying to go, I need to remove all of this negativity, that's where all of your energy is going to. And it's not the most productive way to use it.
It's a good way to put it.
Way more productive to focus on where you want to go, or wherever the river is leading you, even if in the smallest of ways, okay, it's leading me somewhere. I know it's leading me somewhere, and I know it's leading me somewhere better. Keep focusing on that and where you're going. The negativity will remove itself.
Yeah, it will. And I think that's a great way to do it, because you're not focusing on what others are thinking or how they acted. You are focusing on your precious life energy towards what matters, what you go to sleep with every night and you wake up with. And people come and go, but you're still with you always. So
well, even if you're in that river, you see trees going by, you're passing those trees. There might be people on the banks. If you want to sit on that bank with them, they are going to be sitting next to you. Okay. But if you can get back into the river, eventually you pass them.
Yes.
Because they're intent on staying on that bank.
Right. And you may not get the kindest response, but it's not that this is your river. This is not theirs. You know,
the river of life is always going to be moving. People are on different times getting in or getting out, joining you, getting, you know, the rivers, they part, they come together. We're all that's the weaving of life essentially. But like I said, it's always leading, but don't put your energy and your focus there. Put it on where you want to go.
Put it where you want to go. What you've got, put what you own and what you have, put it in the world to do with it what you need to do.
Even in the littlest ways. And and that's one of the greatest honors I've had is watching you, Olivia, do this.
Thank you.
Honestly, it was you figuring out being in this corporate world, being who you are and giving what you have to give. Even if it's just wearing the clothes that you wear and showing other women they can wear that too, or other men they can wear that too. You can bring you being you in this environment shows that you can do it. That it doesn't have to be this formulaic way of being. It doesn't have to be this boxed living. You can bring you into it, even in the smallest ways.
And they may see, you may not know. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, sorry, I'll pop on. No, I interrupted your conversation. Sorry, I'm just so excited.
No, it's okay. It's no problem. I love a great conversation. I was just saying that you, like I said, sometimes it's as easy, sometimes the easiest, let me say this a different way. Sometimes all you can do is put one foot in. So maybe you're wearing the corporate outfit for this week or the next 6 months, but you decide you want to add your woman a red. Maybe red's too much, so maybe you're not going to go all the way there, but maybe, pink. Like something different than a black shoe or whatever. And you're just putting that little something in there, for men, whatever that version is. Maybe I don't know, there's some way for you to add you into your life right now. Because there's a lot of people that maybe might be in a job that they don't like right now, and they don't know how they're going to switch it. And they don't know how to go from where they are right now to where they want to be. And here's how you do it. One little piece at a time of putting more and more and more of you into your life, into your work environment, so that you feel like, because that's the thing, is we feel like when we're in a job that we don't like or a place that we don't like, it's really because we're so separated from ourselves. We think that the job itself is separating us from ourselves. We feel like we can't be ourselves there. That's why a lot of kids don't like going to school, is they don't feel like they can be themselves at school. And the greatest thing you can give a child is that ability to realize that, yes, you can.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that you don't have to start putting them in a box because of some stereotype or fear you have it. And I'm not a parent, so I can't say this with a full understanding, but I am a teacher, and I have seen what happens when students are in my classroom.
Nieces and nephews, and you do that.
I have so many. I do. Yeah. So it's just that it's okay if you want to wear the bright socks because you love socks and you're a happy kid, or whatever it might be. So thank you for that, because in the past week, I had two individuals who follow my page and the information. And one came up to me and said, I just want to show you my new heels, tall young lady. And I bought them because you are tall and you wear heels, and I just love them, and I'm just going to wear them. And then they bought 2 pairs, and it was just nice. And I smiled, and that so happy. And the second one said, well, you inspired me, and I cut off 8 inches of my hair because I saw you cut your hair, 3 weeks ago.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Feeling like they just were able to start again and own something. And I tend to be perfectionist tendencies and have to have it perfect before I do it. That's not practicing my own wellness teaching of taking small steps, even if it's not perfect. So that little feedback is fuel for me to continue with Liv Balanced. But what that means is to continue just being me. And that's the important thing. Because sometimes I think, what does Liv Balanced need to be? I got to do this and I got to do this. And it's like, no. What do you want to do? What is true to you? And express it. So that's how,
Sorry.
No, you're fine. No, that's pretty much it. It's
well,
this is what you got.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody pays attention to the perfectionism. Yeah. We pay attention to the perfectionism way more. And that perfectionism, again, just comes from that conditioning. Yes. Feeling like you have to have things done this particular way. There's a social conditioning that comes from that. But nobody notices it but you. And the other thing is, don't underestimate the influence that you have. Don't underestimate the influence of who you being in this world as you has on like you being you, Olivia, in this truth that you've been in, fully expressing yourself now for the last couple of years, led to this podcast.
Ta-da!
Led to 2 other ladies feeling like they could step out of their boxes. So kudos to you. That's huge. That is huge. Honestly, this is our legacy. When people say, hey, what's my purpose? Your purpose is to contribute to the conversation. And it's a conversation the world is having. Your purpose is to show up authentically in life and give what you have to give, even if it's in the smallest of ways. Even if it's just showing up to that boring job that you absolutely hate, but you're showing up 100%. Yes. That is your purpose in this moment. Right. That is that becoming. That is that. That is you contributing to the conversation of this world. And that is a part of your legacy. Because I guarantee you, Olivia, honestly, every one of your nieces and your nephews probably are looking at you going, Aunt Olivia, yes, she knows. They're going to remember you, and they're going to have that permission when they're getting out into the world, even if right now, if they want to wear those brightly colored socks, you open that box that says, I can do that. It's socially acceptable. Look, this adult is doing it. I can too. Right. Okay, so you never know who's watching us.
And that is probably the area where I am in my current growth. So I'm more comfortable owning me and expressing that, but then owning and accepting how it affects others when they give me a compliment. Receiving compliments has never been easy for me. And I remember my mom saying, honey, if someone says something nice, just let it sit. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to explain it. You have to tell them just say thank you. And that is my current area of growth. I can recognize it because I can still have that weird sort of like, feeling. I had that feeling 2 years ago when we met, when you asked me to wear bright clothing for a photo shoot. I was like, but that's gone now. So it is that constant little bitty, you may feel that discomfort, but it's getting through it, wading through it one step at a time, as you said. And you mentioned a few minutes ago about contributing to the conversation. And that is how we met. We were having a conversation at a restaurant, and there were a couple of other ladies, and I had said, I was weary, and I was like just trying to relax, and I was trying to eat, and they're like, so what do you do? Where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. And I remember you and the other women there being so supportive when I said, I got divorced a couple of years ago, and then I moved, and then I went to law school, and I just graduated. I'm going to do this. And you guys were all so supportive. And that conversation we had together was it just buoyancy. It was a buoyancy because there was shared experience, and there was just good job, girlfriend. just keep trying. And to get that was just contributing to that conversation, like you said, just helping someone because you just feel like it. Say something nice. So
because it's on your heart to say, because you feel, again, it's that resonance and it's that connection of, I've been there. It's that recognition. But it's also a recognition of greatness when we see it. We can't always sometimes see our own greatness. Right. Honestly. And one of my greatest privileges was being able to be in that session with you and go, yes, wear that bright color shirt. Yes, thank you. Can. And you were nervous. I really feel like you were nervous because that was your truth stepping out into the world where it didn't feel safe. And when we feel nervous, it's always about, is it safe to be this?
Safe. Exactly.
we're all being individuals now, and that feels unsafe in a world that for millennia has been about sameness.
Mm-hmm.
And when it has been all about this messaging of be different and it's dangerous. Now we can be whatever the hell we want, and yet it's like we're still living in cages.
And the pandemic's not helping anybody. And that's kind of where my research is going. But to your point, that's exactly, we are in this weird precipice where we can look over at a new area, a new land, and we now have the capability of each going to it without having to say someone can bless you to do that, or can, whatever it might be. And stepping out, that metaphorical and then day-to-day stepping out is, can feel a little trepidatious.
Oh yeah.
But it does become better when you are being genuine to yourself and what that is. And I think that, yeah, we have covered some serious ground. This is good. This is normal. This is normal for us too.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes. It's really, really fun.
It is. And so the Art of Becoming series podcast is, how do we access it?
Okay, so you can go to my website at theartofbecoming.me, and there you can find all the podcasts there. You can also find a lot of blog posts that I've written there all about this process. I've been writing it for a couple of years now, and some of them can be pretty raw about the experience of becoming, some of the struggles that I've really had. And I just really felt like that was so important to put out into the world. So if one person can read it and go, that's me.
Yep.
I feel heard, I feel seen, then it's to the benefit. So, and the Art of Becoming is really about the process of this becoming and of who you're meant to be, and stripping away all of that.
I love it. And I need to get in there and listen to a couple of them. I've got my eye on, especially on the too much. We've talked about that one. So that will be my next one to listen to. So thank you so much for participating and for being my inaugural guest and for being a friend and being supportive. And, this is about, guys, listening. This is becoming and living balanced and breathing you. They're all part of the same wheel that has to roll forward in this life. And Stefanie, thank you for being a part of this. Any last wishes, thoughts, or concerns, words you want to say to anybody?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for asking me to be a part of this. It's been my biggest honor. And and everybody, just trust yourself. You really have got this. You really do. And if no one else has told you in this today, you've got this. Okay. I promise you, you've got this, and your purpose is so important. Your presence, your existence in this world is so important. Don't underestimate that.
Thank you, Stefanie. And thank you, listeners. And remember to live balanced, breathe you, and take it one breath and one step at a time.